This is Duke University.
Great. Thank you so much for coming. We just want to take a minute to thank our outgoing presidents and our outgoing cabinet, so Freddie and Tolu, who are not going to be presidents next year because they'll graduate. And the rest of our cabinet, who has also done an amazing job of organizing this conference.
So my name is Idris Dosumo, and I'm one of the incoming co-presidents of the Business in Africa Club at Duke University. Okay, all right. So I'm sure you all know Leah. She presented a panel earlier. So the next thing we have is the closing keynote, and I want to introduce our speaker, Dr. Uyi Stewart. Dr. Uyi Stewart is an IBM Distinguished Engineer and the Chief Scientist of IBM Research in Africa. This is the newest laboratory in IBM's global network of 12 research labs that will focus on technological innovations germane to the African continent. He has 20 years of experience in software and services research, including speech interfaces, machine translation, natural language processing, mobile, and social computing. As a technology transfer specialist, he has led the implementation of real-world solutions used by millions of users. In the services industry, which is the largest segment of the information technology marketplace, he was instrumental to the formation of IBM Services Innovation Lab, responsible for the technical strategy and program management involving 200 researchers across 8 global labs. Furthermore, he co-led the strategy that resulted in the establishment of IBM Research in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Uyi Stewart.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks. Ma'am. She leaving me hanging. Story of my life, yeah? Very kind. I want to begin by thanking the organizers of this wonderful conference. I've been sitting here and just taking it all in. The quality has been amazing, right? The depth of presentation, super. And the Q&A just refreshing. So Cedric and everybody, I don't know all of you, but Cedric is my main contact. I want to do this again. One more round of applause. Okay, so I am supposed to wrap it up, right? And if you know me, I'm the energy guy. I'm a little jet lagged. Okay, I just flew in from Nairobi, but still I will live up to my MO, right? It's high energy. What you see is what you get. So what is the state of innovation right now in Africa? What is the state? People are doing great work, but it's incremental progress, right? It's incremental progress. So the one success story that we have in Africa in terms of innovation comes from East Africa through Safaricom, right? What the world calls M-Pesa, right? Mobile money. And if you analyze the success of M-Pesa and mobile money, the key ingredient is its ability to scale, so scalability. Therefore, it means innovation in Africa that is exported to the rest of the world, right? Scale. That's great. Give me another example. So other examples of innovation exist, but they are incremental. The vision I want to cast this evening, if you permit me, is a transformative one, right? I want to cast a transformational vision. What that means is that I think big thoughts. I don't want incremental progress. I want drastic, foundational, fundamental change that transforms the continent, okay? So that's the vision I want to cast. You ready with? Excellent. Excellent. So I'm kind of old-fashioned. I want to outline what my objectives are in the next 40 minutes. So number one, on this journey to outline this transformative vision, the first thing I want to do is to sort of lay the background for what I do and who I am, who we are, which is IBM Research, okay? Once I do that, then I'll go into Africa, and in the expose on Africa, I will be really pragmatic and real, okay? And talk about some of the things that's going on. And then motivate, and this is the real key, motivate a vision for the transformation, all right? And then end with opportunities. Those are my goals today. So let's begin with level setting. Let's look at, let's define so that we have a shared understanding of what we want to achieve in the next 40 minutes. What is innovation? So I put it on the board, and I want to outline a few properties, because these are essential. So number one is a good or service that creates value. You got to underline that. Otherwise, you will stay in the realm of incremental innovation. In order to get into the domain of transformative innovation, it's a good or service that creates value. In other words, someone is willing to pay for it. This is the big time, right? I'm glad I'm wrapping this up because I want to challenge this audience today. And this is what we're seeing in Africa. People are doing great stuff, but who's willing to pay for it? So in terms of my focus today, these are the parameters that will guide what I want to motivate, right? So to be called an innovation, an idea must be replicable, right? A one-off is useless to me. Now, it's a scientific challenge. Now, if you heard some of my questions to the panelists today, I was poking at this replicability, right? Innovation has to be replicable, and it has to be affordable, right? Finally, it must be functional. It must satisfy a need. These are the ingredients for innovation. And hold me to task, because I'm going to leverage these as I motivate a vision for innovation, right? On the right-hand corner, I thought I should amuse you a little bit and ask, where does Africa stand relative to the IP that is generated globally, right? So one of the underpinnings of innovation is that you have to generate intellectual property. We're a no-show. We are a no-show. So we've got to change our approach to intellectual property, because that's another backbone for innovation. Now, who are we? I'm going to go through this very quickly. 100 years plus company, that's IBM, right, as a company. And research has been around for 70 years, right? So research is the spear of innovation in the company. In the last 23 years, IBM has consistently led the whole world in generating IP, patents. Not even Google or Microsoft comes second to us. Consistently for 23 years. Now, if you look at the makeup of IBM as a company, right, and we are the world leader in IP, almost 40% of the IP that is generated at IBM comes from research. And research is only 3,000 worldwide. Okay? Now, it's in our DNA. This is who we are. We are small, but we are focused, right? Because of the parameters that I outlined earlier. And we address big problems. And that's going to take me to the next chart, where we say that the world is our lab. The world is our lab. So except Antarctica, we have a presence in the whole world, right? So you can see the research spread. And just 3 years ago, and as you read in my bio, I was actually co-lead of the team that worked on the strategy that resulted in the establishment of the lab in Africa. So I'm thankful that we have a research facility now in Africa to address Africa's grand challenges. So let me introduce IBM Research Africa. So we're 3 years old. We have one mission, very simple, to leverage science and technology to develop commercially viable innovation. That's the key. Commercially viable innovation that will impact people's lives. That's our mission as a research lab. And you ask, what are these grand challenges in Africa? What are these grand challenges? Now, there are many, but I want to simplify it into 4 categories. The first and the foundational challenge is a series of research that we work on to help us to change, to transform governmental and regulatory processes across the African continent. So, for instance, work on ease of doing business in African countries, right, and other regulatory policies. That's foundational. You've got to change policy first. Now, the second set of focus area that we call it infrastructure. Once you fix the regulatory policy, then the next thing you need to do is to create the base to facilitate innovation. We call that infrastructure. So you look at things like power, you look at things like water, right, which are foundational, fundamental infrastructure required for innovation and for societies to thrive. And then the next sector that we look at, so if you have optimized regulatory process, and then you have a solid infrastructure, then the next category that we look at is what we call inclusiveness, right? Because now society needs to include others. So the category the areas that we look at within the domain of inclusiveness covers things like healthcare, right? Covers things like education. And I'm not going to go into this because I can keep talking about that till tomorrow, but you know the categories. So let me repeat. You have regulatory process, you have the infrastructure, you have the inclusive domain. When you have all 3, then you can be bold. You address millennials. Okay? So that's what this chart is. Now, Africa, my beloved Africa. I want to keep it real. Before I go into innovation, there are 2 sides to Africa. There are 2 sides to the coin. Now, this chart is my very weak attempt, right, to capture some of the problems and challenges that we have in the continent. If you've been following me, my latest work is in the domain of Ebola, right? So it's all over the news in West Africa. There is always something. So this catalogs some of the issues we have. Linguistic issues, 3,000 languages, right? I heard today 53 countries, 54. Eritrea will fight you, but that's okay. I put it 55 just to be conservative. And Sega, I'm not going to get into all of those things, okay? So, marginalization of women, extreme poverty. I can go on and on. This is one side of Africa. It is real. I live there right now, and you see it. But the challenges present opportunity. Now, someone, I think it was Naguib, showed a different version of this chart earlier, right? So if you look at the land mass of Africa, it can consume all of China, all of the United States, half of Europe, including India. Oh my goodness. So this fluidity and this space presents infrastructural challenges, which in turn is an opportunity for research because they speak to your ability to scale. All right? And so the other side of the coin in Africa is the one that folks have talked about today. So I've shown you some of the challenges we face. Notice I didn't call them problems because I'm a researcher at heart, right? They are challenges because they stimulate me to say, where is the solution? Now, this is the economic side. And look, by the end of 2015, Africa's nominal GDP is expected to reach $2.5 trillion US. And we can revise that number. I know there have been challenges with Ebola in West Africa, but that number, we can revise it because it's going up, okay? In spite of this positive, amazing side of Africa, and I've shown you the 2 sides, in spite of it, hold your horses. I want you to pause, because Africa is at a very precious moment right now, what I call the tipping point. If we get this right, and I say we collectively, if we get this right, all of the good things that I've heard on the panels today will happen. But if we don't get it right, if we don't, I'm afraid that it's a slippery slope. And that's why I have the dominoes in there. It's a delicate point right now. So what is this thing that Uyi is talking about? So on the one hand, 10 of the fastest growing economies come from Africa. Hooray! Sustained GDP growth of anywhere between 5 to 10%. I know the World Bank has revised this a little lower. That's great, but it's growing, right? That's on the one hand. On the other hand, you say, how can Africa measure up in terms of the grand challenges that I talked about, which is how can Africa measure up in terms of investment in infrastructure? Because there's a huge deficit there. Now, what the World Bank says is that in Africa, what is required is anywhere between 930 billion to 1 trillion US dollars within 10 years for Africa to meet up, just to meet up. That's about 93 billion per year. The best functioning African country is Rwanda, and they spend only about 30%. Where's the 70% going to come from? Where is the 70% going to come from? This is what I mean by a tipping point. I like your enthusiasm. I am the eternal optimist. I'm excited. I'm gung-ho about Africa, but I'm realistic. How do we bridge the chasm? The track record says we can't. Therefore, should we pack up and go home? No. I have a point of view, and I want to take you on that journey right now. IBM has a point of view. Now I'm saying I. Who am I? Not me. You understand what I'm saying, right? So IBM and IBM Research Africa, we have a point of view. And I want to take you through that point of view and to overcome this chasm that I talked about. But before I do that, I love this chart. This is not my chart, right? This comes from Unleashing the Killer app. When you look at this chart, what does it say? It gives room for the ability to leverage technology to achieve the transformation that we desire in Africa. Now, on the one hand, innovation in social, political, and business systems can only trigger incremental change, period. But if you look at the hockey stick shape there, that if we are able to leverage innovation in technology, the transformation is exponential. That's what gives me hope. That's what keeps me up at night. And that's what I'm about to take you through right now. So I want to motivate this vision, if you bear with me, right, for how we can achieve this kind of transformational growth, leveraging technology. It's all about data. The way to bridge the infrastructural chasm in Africa is all about data. In fact, if you've been following IBM, my CEO, Ginny Rometty, says, and I quote with all pride and joy, that data is Africa's untapped natural resource. What does that mean? Well, before I answer that, let me say, where does the data come from? Do you know that there are more mobile phones in Africa than adults? Do you know that? It's a fact. What does that mean? It means that I have this massive data source that is available to me. Every device, every mobile device is a veritable data source. Question is, are we using it? New cars that we import from Japan and from the United States and the UK, they give us the ability to do what we call IoT, Internet of Things. This idea of leveraging low-grade, low-cost sensors to generate data. What are we doing about it? Right? Everywhere you look, data, data, data everywhere. Facebook. I remember a couple of years ago, I was trying to do research on social networking in Africa. I think this was like 4 years ago. And because of connectivity, penetration was weak. But right now, my goodness, Facebook wants to set up a research lab in Africa because of exponential growth. Social, mobile, Internet of Things, cloud. That's the foundation for leveraging data to bridge the infrastructural chasm that we have in Africa. But, I took this in Kenya, Shege. but it is not easy. A lot of our data that we have in Africa exists where? This is what I call idle data, dark data. But the beauty, and this is the point I'm making, the beauty is that intelligence is hidden in this stack of papers. Technology exists at IBM and elsewhere, OCR, that can digitize this. Data, data, data everywhere. So now I get into the technology discussions. So you get the first point. The first point is that there is availability of data, but we are not using it. If we use it the right way, we can overcome the infrastructural chasm. The question that I haven't answered is how? That's what I'm about to take you through right now. I have a few charts, a little technical, but I will try to stay as descriptive as I can. So imagine that the universe is divided into three. Okay? Just imagine that on the one hand, you have hardware, what I call devices or infrastructure. And you can see this in point of sale, right? And think of these as devices or items that generate records based on transactions that we perform. So I go to, I was going to say I go to Nakumatt. I'm so Kenyan in my mind now. I go to Stop and Shop or ShopRite because I'm East Coast kind of guy, right? And you go there, and every time you make a purchase, you generate a footprint. You generate data, right? And it exists. Data about you all around, but we are not using it. So that's what we are calling system of record. It exists in Africa right now. Even with our legacy and infrastructural challenges, we have those systems. Those systems generate data. Now, we have innovation that is happening. It's great innovation, incremental progress that is happening, and so you mostly on the mobile space, what I would call systems of engagement. Okay? What we don't have, and that's what I'm going to focus on, because that's where you leverage the power of data. So we have the system of record, we have a quasi-system of engagement. But what is missing is this universe in the middle, systems of insight. That's what I'm about to take you through. I'm about to unpackage a technological vision that allows us to explore and exploit data to generate the right kind of insights to help us to bridge the infrastructural chasm. Okay? I have a simple chart here. I know it's kind of busy, but here's the way to look at this chart. Okay? On the x-axis, right? On the x-axis, think of this as the scale of data that is coming in. Okay? And on the y-axis, it's our ability to make decisions. Why? Because the timely capture of insights from data is what creates the value, not the data itself, right? It's the ability to generate insights, meaningful insights in a timely manner that is required. But the problem and the challenge is that on the x-axis, we generate We generate right now about 3 exabytes of data. And the projection is that in another 10, 15 years, 10 years, we will be generating zettabytes of data. Now, for anyone who knows the difference, zettabyte is the highest you can get in the byte meter right now. And computationally, that is 21 zeros, if you can just imagine that, right? So what's happening is that because of the rapidity of the flux of data and the desire to move to this end of the scale, which is to generate data in insights in a timely manner, and our inability to do it, we are stuck here. Current systems stay here. They optimize at the mega, sometimes kilo, and take data that is a month or a week old to run analytics. Africa won't survive this way, and that's not what the world needs. This is where we are right now, and so we need to change. I want to make a bold statement, a very bold statement. Africa's immediate and strategic opportunity is to leapfrog to the next wave of IT by leveraging data and cognitive systems. In the last 10 minutes, I have motivated data to you. What I haven't done is to discuss cognitive systems, and that's what I'm about to do. Everyone with me so far? At the end of the day, I'm an African. We tell stories, you know what I'm saying? But it's amazing when you can tell a technological story. So, here is the story. In the beginning, and for those who have been in computer science, I know I'm talking to a business audience here, and I've tried to stay business-like, I hope so, right? But in the beginning, this is way back to right around between the First World War and the Second World War. We were in an era of computing where computers and machine systems did arithmetic. They crunched numbers. That's what we call the tabulating systems era. And this took us up to the Second World War and post-Second World War. Now, I'm going back. After the Second World War, say right around 1950, 1960, for any student of computer science here, you will see that people started to talk about intelligent systems. Intelligent systems. In fact, there is a famous paper by J.C.R. Littlicker, 1950, okay, that talks about man-machine symbiosis. Great paper, look it up. But we were not capable of realizing the vision of Littlicker. Instead, what did we do? We adopted what is called a von Neumann architecture. Let me keep this a little descriptive. So if you look at a computer system, you have a CPU, the central processing unit, okay? In the CPU, there is something called a microprocessor, okay? And then on the other hand, there is something called the memory. And then what happens in this architecture is that every time there is a CLI, there is a command, okay? There is an interaction between the microprocessor, which is the brain of the machine, and the memory. And it goes back and forth, back and forth. First off, that's not going to work in Africa. You know why? Because of the energy requirement. You go back and forth, back and forth. So we've got to change systems. That's number one. But number two, every time you go back and forth, there is an assumption there that the intelligent designer knows what the problem is. And because he knows what the problem is, he provides a solution. Because if the solution does not exist in the microprocessor, every time it goes back and forth and does not see the solution, system crashes. That's the current programmable system. We've got to change. Why? Because of what I said earlier. Data is pouring. If data is pouring like rain, then current system is completely inadequate. We've got to change. We have to be able to digest and analyze data as it pours in. And so we are now getting into a new era of computing called the cognitive systems era. Machines that can reason, that can think, but more importantly, that can learn from the data. And because they can learn from the data, they no longer require the kind of programming that we have in current systems. That's the vision. That's the motivation. Notice that this vision is not an IBM vision. We are just the realizers of this vision. Who started it? Goes back again to J.C.R. Lidlicker. It's just that the technology was not there. It took us what? So the vision was 1950, between 1950 and 1960. It's taking what? 56 years, over 50 years. That's the nature of progression and change in technology. What has changed? Massive improvement in machine learning techniques. And our ability to extract knowledge from data has changed. I wish I have time to go into the geeky stuff, but I won't. I've talked about what the changes are. So next chart is in one sentence, what is cognitive computing? One sentence. It's simply man and machine working together collaboratively. That's cognitive system. The best of man and the best of machine in a symbiotic way working together to solve problems. That's cognitive system, okay? And I won't go into all of the technical realization of it. But with cognitive systems, machines will be more rational and analytical. Yay, because we need this, because data everywhere. With cognitive systems, people will provide expertise, judgment, intuition, empathy. We are moral beings. We provide morality, right? And the human creativity. So you take the best of us and the best of machine, storage, memory, processing, right? You take both together and we can win. Let me digress very quickly. So there is an experiment that is reported in this seminal paper that was written by J.C.R. Lidlicker. And let me talk about it because I think it drives the point home. So Lidlicker said, I want to look at human creativity facilitated by computers in problem solving. He said that is his focus. And so he looked at what we do when we are writing a research paper, and I'm speaking to an academic audience here. What did he observe? That 85% of the time we spend on tasks associated with looking for the data, tabulating the data, classifying the data, all of those mundane tasks that computers are good at. What he found is that when we do a good job of tabulating the data, it takes only 15% of effort to reach a conclusion. If that's you, and if that's true, then we have the answer of this symbiotic relationship between man and machine. That's the vision. That's the vision of cognitive systems. All right. What I like on this chart, and I'm almost done, what I like on this chart is this line. And I say a lot of things here, and I say a lot, so it's okay. But this one, this particular line. Cognitive systems will adapt to people and will interact with us in ways that are natural to us. You know why I'm bringing this out? I sat here and I'm almost biting my tongue because folks are talking about illiteracy. Yes, it's a problem, it's a challenge, but it can be overcome with this new paradigm. It can be overcome. Ask me how when we go to cocktail. But this is what gets me excited about this new vision in computer science and this new approach, because finally we can address Africa's problems. And so, what is IBM doing? So I'm done with the technical side. Back again to storytelling. So what is IBM doing? Last year, in February, in Lagos, my CEO launched a project called Project Lucy, right? Project Lucy. Who knows Lucy?
Isn't Lucy the oldest human skeleton ever found?
That's right. And Lucy proves that you and I are related, right? So Lucy, at its core, the philosophy in Lucy talks about the connectedness that we all share, this common ancestry, right? And so we said, let's go back to the origin of mankind. Let's go back to the origin of science. Let's go back to the cradle of civilization. Let's take cognitive systems back to Africa because there are infrastructural challenges. Great. Yes, America is beautiful. Yes, but what I want to show is that I can use data to address challenges in Africa and prove this new paradigm in cognitive systems. And that's Project Lucy. And in the process, help fuel IT innovation ecosystems and spur business opportunities. Let me talk about how that will happen. Hopefully, I've convinced you, right, that data is the way to go. Hopefully, you see that our ability to analyze data is critical in whatever we do in the continent of Africa. So here is the platform. It's very simple. So I leverage cloud computing. And I create this massive storage, this massive system, this online system, right, that is able to ingest zettabytes of data, not exabytes. Because you know, innovation in storage is so tremendous now that storing things is no longer my problem. I leverage OCR to turn paper into digital in Africa. Therefore, I have this massive database that contains data on weather, on climate, environmental changes, on cows, on name it, whatever it is in Africa. Name it. And then I take cognitive systems and embedded learning systems, such as machine learning, that allows me to look at correlations amongst the data, run a simple regression on it, generate insights. And those insights could tell me that when it rains, which is kind of obvious, when it rains, I can predict that so and so and so roads will flood in Nairobi because they will, therefore, there's a traffic jam. I can't do that right now. But this is the promise of this platform. And so how does it generate business? How? Have you heard about what we call the API economy? Simple protocol. We make the investment. We build it. All you do is to ingest data. We build it. And based on the data, based on what you want to do, you tell me what is it that you want to do. I give you this protocol, very simple protocol, that allows you to connect now and build an application. Remember, that's the innovation in Africa right now. Everyone is building apps, but the analytics on the data is missing. Let me do what I do. I play to my strength. That's what Lucy will do. Give APIs to all of the innovators in Africa who wants to build anything. They build. And then guess what? We have created this vibrant ecosystem. That's the vision. That's the vision. So, 2 more charts and I'm done. 2 more charts. My vision is cast. So what I want to do in these 2 charts is sort of to, because I'm speaking to a business audience, is to tell you that the IT market in Africa is growing double digits year over year, right? And then to all the entrepreneurs here and innovators looking for new ways to invest, this is for you. Let's forget the geeky stuff. So Africa's total IT market by 2017 is projected to be 20 billion. 20 billion. The Kenya IT market last year, 1 billion, and it's growing at 12%. And if you look at the GDP for Nigeria, once it was revised and rebased, 404 billion, right? South Africa, 384 billion, and Kenya, 37 billion. That's a whole world of economic opportunity. And so I call out 3 areas. Been on the ground now 3 years, heading the research lab, working on it. So I'm giving you my tips, secrets for investments. In South Africa, you can't go wrong with finance, real estate, and business services. Why? Because about 20% of the nation's GDP comes from this sector. In Nigeria, my goodness, anyone who wants to invest, e-commerce, 120 million phones and counting, right? And the growth is astronomical, right? 1.3 billion in e-commerce and growing. Jumia, Alibaba, what's the other one? Konga. It's all there. Where are the innovators? Right? Where are the innovators? I've shown you how technology will enable you. Now I'm giving you areas to focus on. And finally, if your thrill and your focus is East Africa, mobile money, right? 70% of Kenya's GDP comes from that simple innovation. 5 billion annually. I'm going to skip so many charts because I think you get it. I have, we need to look at education. We need to look at healthcare. We need to look at how we deliver government services, right? But this final chart, I sat up last night and said, what is the take-home message to entrepreneurs, right? Again, on the x-axis is what I call innovation parameters. And on the y-axis are implementation parameters. What is complex and desirable is that the higher you go, the more difficult it is, right, on the x-axis. And this side, which is to realize and develop a killer app within 3 to 5 years, is complex. Why? Because you would have already created a right place, right time application that speaks to local needs. You would have a right business model or business ecosystem to support your business model. You will have scalability already solved, right? Along with scalability is affordability and reliability. And finally, you have solved the problem of time to value, which also includes quality. When you have all of those, this one single chart talks about how we can realize innovation in the continent of Africa. And to conclude, we have a program, and you heard about this program from Naguib. And I'm very excited about this program. It's called Leading to Africa. As a research lab and as a corporation, we have made the investment. We're there. And I've shown you the vision of the technology that we have put on the ground. I've chronicled the issues, and I've detailed the approach to resolving the issue. Now I'm saying, let's work together. All roads lead to Africa. Let's work together so that we can achieve not incremental change, but a massive transformation. Why? This is Africa's moment. Thank you for listening. We have room for a few questions, and I'll take water as well. Yes, sir.
Again, excellent presentation today. As a statistician, when I see big data, it gets me very excited. So it will be interesting to see this in the next few years.
That's right.
Although now, with Africa and most African countries having, mobile phones or cell phones already, can we start doing some of this data mining already with what they have, get them some apps, and if they breathe, we start getting the information at IBM headquarters and so on. I believe we can start doing that now rather than putting the infrastructure there because they're already using cell phones and all we have to do is just get the apps and if you breathe, I know you're breathing.
That's right. Great point. Yes. The future is today. I agree with you. And we've already started. So in order to achieve what you just said, there's a piece of work that needs to be done that is called instrumentation. So where we have to allow all of those mobile phones that exist, right, stay within a network. That is, they talk to each other. And then we have to create the pipeline for the data to come to us. We're doing that right now on traffic, right, in Lagos and in Nairobi. Creating this instrumentation, we'll get to Accra, not right now. Creating this instrumentation and the channel to allow the data to come in. Even before all of this that I talked about, right? We're doing it in the space of traffic. And then, like I mentioned earlier, the work on Ebola, right, in Sierra Leone, we've done that as well. So we are implementing on this in small steps. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Is IBM willing to share some of this research with small businesses who can afford to either develop their own apps or get the big data that they need to start up their businesses? In Africa, that is.
So the question is IBM willing to share, right? The answer is yes. We believe, so we need to work together, right? A small business has something to contribute, right? You just can't take, right? So if you put in, you take out. That's the way to approach this. So we encourage small businesses to think through. See, I talked about the scale, right? To think through what is it that you want to achieve. I even within my team, right? I tell them, no, you're not going to get funding for this. Why? Is this something someone wants to buy? Does it generate value? Right? All of those things I put out. So I'm going to ask you the same question. Because you are willing does not make you qualified. Right? This is serious Africa business right now. Africa's challenges can't wait. Right? So we welcome collaboration, but everyone has to go through the same parameter of evaluation so that you put in and you get out of it. Okay? Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Great presentation, Uyi. But you talked about how there's so much app development in Africa. And for investors who are on this side of the world trying to go back, are there like app development hubs that you can tap into? And of course, you know, your IT training pipeline is part of the resources and the skills that we could leverage over there.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. It's a great question as well. So there are hubs. Notice what I said. Hubs exist. So in Lagos, there's something called, where are the Nigerians in the house? Yeah, you know, the tech corridor in the Yaba, right? So you have that, right? And in Nairobi, you have all these vibrant hubs. So you have iHub, you have ILA, they are all there. What we need to get them out of is this fixation on incremental change, right? Why can't Africa produce the next Mike Zuckerberg? Why? Yeah, so because you may have missed it. I said the one innovation that we are so, as Africans, we're so happy is M-Pesa. But what is the ingredient? M-Pesa is scalable. We can't innovate and just think of me and my community. We start there, but we've got to innovate and say, I'm going to export it to the rest of the world. That's the work that is happening. So I'm engaging the folks in Lagos. I'm engaging the folks in Nairobi. We are trying to work on this. It's a process that allows folks to understand innovation, and then we can hit our target. Okay? It's a lot of work. Excellent. Yes, sir.
Sorry, thank you. I'm just curious to know, you mentioned the IP, if you recall the IP chart. I'm just curious to know how has that changed over time in the 3 years you've been in Africa for the African community?
Absolutely. That's a great question. It's one I'm most proud about. Seriously. Can I, because it's now general knowledge, I think it was what? 6 months once we got on the ground, we filed our first IP, our first patent. It's called the first African patent. So me and my team, right? And, you know, everyone is innovating on the mobile phone. And we said, can we predict what the range of innovations will be in 5, 10 years where no one is really thinking right now? We did, and we filed our first patent, right? And now the lab, everyone, maybe once every quarter, right, we get like 5 to 6 patents. We need more people to come on the ground. We are changing that. It's still not transformational yet. Transformational is when we begin to produce in hundreds. We're on the track, but we are not there. But we are making changes, okay? And even on traffic, I can go on and on where cool IPs are coming out from our work, right? Innovation is basically taking the obvious and putting a method on it, and then you protect it.
Yes. Yeah, in terms of, let's take for instance, like the other guy who was here in Uganda, how many years they don't revise their curriculum. What I'm talking about. What I noticed myself, I did Oracle Financial, the back end, because I used to understand the front end. I decided to know the back end and the business BI and all that stuff to understand what it was all about. But what I noticed, most of some of the universities here don't even teach that. None of these people understand SQL, all that stuff. There was only one university that is teaching BI, but they quit teaching BI. But how can we, as Africans who want to help, we can teach those classes. Can you fund those classes so that we can help getting that done? You guys, train some people. Can you fund some of those programs? Can you do that, IBM?
Yeah, so that's another very good question. So this morning I said, I think it was in reaction to a side discussion, and I said there are two sides to the coin. So we have what we call an Africa strategy, where we push innovation. You see, I'm an innovator, right? And research is what I know how to do in terms of computer science. This is the story you've heard. But we need boots and legs on the ground, right, to do this, which is your question. So Nagib's and Don, and so all this, what they're doing really is looking at this other side. How do we build capacity on the ground that enables us to achieve this? Because flying expatriates into Africa is not going to work because it drives the cost point up. We need to grow capacity locally, and IBM is also working on that. So to your real question, which is how do you participate? You don't need me. You have Dawn here, right? That's why she's here. Connect with this lady, and she'll put you into the university relations pipeline.
Yeah, because you notice some of these universities don't teach this kind of thing. You might have a computer science degree, even you go to a PhD program, none of them teach data preps and all that.
Sit over here. Another question?
Hi, thanks for the presentation. I just want to ask that every country in Africa is so different. It has like different socioeconomic dynamics. And when you innovate something, how do you manage how do you make it generic, so generic that each country in Africa can use that? Or if you take an example of M-Pesa, M-Pesa was a big hit in Kenya, but it didn't work that much in South Africa. So how IBM is managing that challenge?
Absolutely, it's a great question. So this is the value of research, right? Everyone looks at Africa. Actually, I have a few charts. I knew I was going to get this question. Not the Ebola question. Hopefully Ebola question comes up. So I have this chart, right? That's the gentleman's question that speaks to Africa. You see the coloring here? Right? So reddish is the least ethnically diverse, right? But greenish is the most ethnically diverse. And look at the cradle of civilization, right? And you see it's more green than red. So yes, there are differences, but here is the answer to your question. From a research perspective, I'm not focusing on the subtle, small differences. At the end of the day, there are actually more similarities in Africa than people care to talk about, whether it's healthcare, right? Let me take healthcare as an example, and I was biting my tongue as the panel was talking. Who can name the #1 disease that kills small children? And this is a very bad example, but it's real in Africa. And this is an Africa statement.
Malaria. Measles.
TB. You're close. No, a simple respiratory disease. Very simple. I thought some folks were going to say malaria because it's kind of the obvious one. This is true in Nigeria. It is true in Uganda. It's true in Kenya. How do I know? So we don't focus on those small differences, right? And again, it comes from data. Another quiz. One more. I'm going to give you 3 numbers and tell me what is the percentage of unbanked in Africa, which is Africans who do not participate in financial services. They don't have a bank account, right? Now, is it 30%? Is it 50%?
No.
Is it 80%?
80%.
Who said 80?
80%.
80%.
Yeah, why?
Now, no, I'm not going to go into why. I need to answer the gentleman's question. So this is an Africa statement. Now, the question is, how can we overcome it? Right? Banks do not loan to poor people. Why? Because it's very expensive to loan to poor people. They don't know them. Poor people don't have a digital footprint. But here's what we've done, massive innovation. We've created an approach that allows us to generate what we call soft data. Soft data that now lets us know poor people, and leveraging cognitive computing, machine learning, and some of these things I talked about, we've created an algorithm that now allows banks to actually loan to poor people. This is an Africa statement. I can go on and on. So from a research perspective, right, we don't focus on the differences, right? We say, yes, there are 55 countries. Yes, there are 3,000 languages. We are looking for commonalities. Let me do one on language. I know these guys are standing, but you started it. You're making me talk about it. So there are 3,000 languages in Africa, yeah? On the surface, it looks like it's an insurmountable problem. But it's not. If you think of it as linguistic islands, there are actually 4 groups. 4. And if I create acoustic and language models for those 4 groups, I've solved Africa's problem. I know I'm making it simple, right? The creation of those acoustic and language models is work, but that's what I get paid for. And my point to you is that if we can just aggregate, use data to aggregate, we can see more commonalities in Africa and address Africa's grand challenges. I want to thank you for letting me be myself.